and Facebook here in a second, and we'll welcome our social medias and make sure I'm sharing my music. We'll get the program started here. All right, welcome everybody. Here we go. Evening. Everybody in here. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Veterans Breakfast Club. Normally Greatest Generation Live for Thursday night, but we'll call it Scuttlebutt tonight. That's our normal Monday night program, but we're going to extend it over into Thursday night this evening. I'm your host, Sean Hall, Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. Our mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. We've been doing it for 16 years. Tonight, we have a fun and special program lined up for you all. Tonight, we are going to be honoring Women Veterans Day, which is not Veterans Day. This is a day that honors the signing of the act, I think it's 1948, that permitted women to serve officially in the armed forces. But we wanted to honor today by having a program about women veterans. And boy, do we have a fun one lined up for you, because not only do we have writer, director Ash Singer on with us. Ash, if you'd like to give a wave.
Hi.
We have one of her actresses in from her production of In Their Footsteps. I want to make sure I said, yeah, I said it right. Oh, great.
You did.
Kristen Hasty. Hopefully I pronounced that right, Kristen. And not only do we have the actress who played Ann Kelsey, we have Ann Kelsey in the room. Ann, good to see you. And we have Sam Christie, who is also not in the show, but her story was portrayed in the show. Everybody knows that I have a theater background, so when Todd said, hey, do you want to host this one, I jumped at the chance because, boy, do I have a lot of questions lined up to talk about the production, the development of this, how Sam and Ann felt watching themselves on stage, which has to be pretty cool. But we're going to get to all that in just a few minutes because I would like to talk a bit about, and I see some of the familiar faces in the room today from earlier today, whenever we were at the Heinz History Center and we were honoring the life of Julia Parsons. And it was quite the event. What an amazing time to just be able to sit and reflect on her life and all of her incredible accomplishments, and the people in the room sharing stories about Julia. Boy, it was great. I'm over in a different view here. I want to make sure that I can get someone here. Jim Roberts, may I ask you to unmute? I saw you there, Jim, but I didn't get a chance to say hi. I wanted to get you were friends with Julia. I wanted to get your take on the Heinz History Center today.
I thought, as usual, you guys did a great job, and I think it was very, very appropriate for in terms of presenting Julia to the people. I think Linda here might have something to add to that.
Not really. No, I thought it was a very all-encompassing tribute to Julia, and it was formal but informal enough to have a good feeling, an easy feeling about talking about Julia.
Yeah,
I agree.
Right. It was just more. The whole program was just really well done and very appropriate.
For those of you who didn't know Julia, she was 104 years old. She passed away in April, was sharp all the way up until the end. Amazing woman. Helped to decode Enigma in World War II, was a Navy wave. It was not declassified, all of her work, until, what'd they say, the 70s. And she didn't really find out until 10, 15 years or so after that she was then allowed to start talking about it. And then she didn't stop talking about it because there was so much, there was so many stories. Every time I would see her, and she would join here online, and she would join us at in-person breakfast, and every time there was some new bit of information that she was talking about or getting into about the intricacies of what the work she did. Not only that, but like how she got involved in it, or the other women that were involved with it. You know, being a part of the war effort. It was incredible. Ben, you gave the benediction there. Ben, what did you think of the event?
Yeah, I thought it was a very fitting tribute, and I was very impressed with the Navy people that came and everyone who witnessed about their relationship with Julia. And Todd did a great job of coordinating and organizing it and emceeing the event, and it was a very fitting tribute. And I was just my honor to be able to say a couple prayers at the beginning and end of the service.
And the last person I unmuted here, Chris Perola. I know more. I saw Ron Stagovich. I saw you there as well. Chris, how'd you feel about today and remembering Julia?
I agree with everything that's said so far. It was a very fitting tribute, very well organized, very heartfelt and sincere. Yes, I was happy to see that the Navy showed up and it represented, but how could they not? And the other organizations as well. What I was struck by, though, was the last comments when her daughter had mentioned that the VBC had given her a whole new career in the last 15 years and motivated her to tell her story and share that. And that was not only a testimony to Julia's fortitude and resolve and giving spirit, it was also a testament to what this organization means to people of that generation and the Korean generation and the Vietnam era, etc. So hats off to the VBC, but his program well done.
And the glass ceilings that she was able to break.
Yes, yes, very much.
Being just sort of like this beacon. And I loved the point someone said that she just wanted women to realize they could do something. They could be a part of something bigger. And just like how inspirational her story was. Amazing. And for those of you who weren't able to join today, I'm going to put into the chat a link to I think this is the WQED video. It's about 10 minutes long. If you'd like to click the link and watch it later, they did this about 4 years ago when she turned 100, and VBC had a big parade come through her neighborhood and birthday, and they talked about her story. Really wonderful, well done video that I just put into the chat there. So please click it and give it a watch later if you'd like to hear a little bit more about Julia's story. So without further ado, love to dive into our main event tonight. And Ash and Ann and Sam and Kristen. Ash, I'd love to start with you. Did you start Infinite Variety Productions? Is that your production company?
Yes, that's my production company.
So I'd love to hear a bit about your background and understand a bit about how In Their Footsteps came to be.
So I started as an actor, and I think there's a lot of stories like this. When I started acting, there were not a lot of stories where the women were in the forefront of the story. And so I wanted to start doing more stories about women, and I've loved history. So I started a theater company that spotlights women's history, and I'm a dramaturg. I love research. So I just started researching a lot of these stories, and IVP was around for a little while, and I had done some other stories that were veteran based. There's a play out there about Operation Baby Lift, which I was asked to come over and help edit, and it was a wonderful experience. And I'll say this, I didn't learn very much about the Vietnam War when I was younger. So every time I would get something else, it was a new introduction to something I should have known. So I learned a little bit about Operation Baby Lift. During Operation Baby Lift, there's a wonderful veteran, if he's watching, Bob Staneritz, who came up to me and wanted help writing a play about what it's like to lose people. He served in the Vietnam War, and he loves telling a story he just said, "Who's in charge here?" He came up to a whole group of us and yelled that until I raised my hand, really scared. And then we created a play based on his, he had a lot of poetry and things called Beyond the Etchings, which just looks at what it's like for families to go to the Vietnam Wall who have lost those who went to war there. And so already my theater company had started to do a lot of veteran-based work. And then I was in grad school at Sarah Lawrence for women's history. And I actually had never done any oral histories up until that point. I was taking an oral history class. And when they asked they asked who would I want to interview, I'd gotten to know Anne, who is the sweetest soul. And I thought for someone who could help me kind of break my way into oral history, that Anne would be the right one to reach out to. And at that point, so IVP started in 2011. We got a not-for-profit status in 2014. And this was about 2017. So we'd already done a whole lot of, plays that were already published, working with different playwrights, but we really wanted to start to write our own plays. So it was the perfect time that I interviewed Anne. And let's just say no one does their first interviews very well, because I interviewed Anne twice, and it is her second interview that actually became part of that play, because I think there was that's what Zoom's going to do, mine all the time. And so I was able, and luckily enough, in my grad school gave me a grant to then put these oral histories together. And from there, I'm sure you have other questions, but that's kind of how I kind of started my journey into In Their Footsteps, was just, oh, you need me to do oral histories. And I absolutely loved it. So yeah, these are the 5 women I ended up. So I reached out to Anne, who then told me to reach out to Judy Jenkins Gaudino, who is an absolute dear, who is in recreation. And my friend Petal at the time knew Lucki, if everyone knows Doris Lucki Allen, who unfortunately passed away last June at the age of 97. And Lucki lived in Oakland, California. So we flew out to Oakland. And if anyone knows Lucki, she greeted us there. She showed us her entire world for that interview. And then she recommended we reach out to Lily. And I actually think, Sam, you were my last. Well, I think you were in Connecticut at that point. And it's, what they call the snowball effect when it comes to interviewing. Snowball effect means you ask one person and they know another person, they know another person. So it didn't take very long for me to get to interview these 5 wonderful people and their experiences. And I was just, again, it was just who recommended who that made me pick what ended up being 2 who were veteran military and 3 civilian employees.
And this was your first documentary theater play that you wrote?
Yeah, so this is my first one I'd ever written. And again, my first oral histories. And from there, I love oral history, and I do a lot of interviewing, and I absolutely think it's a beautiful way to, because, it's just from that person's memory. So it's not like we're saying that this is exactly what happened. This is one person's experience that you get to walk through. And that's actually what I really love about oral history drama, is that you're just helping people walk through this kind of stuff. And I think my training as an actor, which is you have to imagine the circumstances and put yourself into the circumstances, really helped me with interviewing. Because when you're interviewing someone, you want to be able to help guide them into this memory that they have. So yeah, this ended up being the first thing I've ever written. And I'm not one to take breaks. So I think I finished my last interview in 2017 in the spring. And that summer, we rented space at NYU and we continued to work on the script. And it's the exact words. So it is edited the way it is. But it's everyone's exact words, just kind of copy and pasted into conversation, because we thought it was really important, or I thought it was really important for people to know that these are the actual words that these women spoke to me during the interview. And every interview was very different. It showed the personality of every single woman that I interviewed here.
That was going to be one of my questions, because you can create a drama by having, one actress comes up, does a 20-minute monologue, and then the next and the next and the next. But taking these interviews and then editing them into conversation, that must have been quite challenging.
It actually wasn't as much as one would think. So first, there were common themes that I was really, because again, I didn't want this to be about the war. I wanted it to be about the women. So I asked them what they did on their time off. And, so even if everyone had very different things and I can say, Anne went to the laundromat. One of my favorite scenes is when she talks about going to the laundromat and just listening and to the sound of the laundry.
Let
Lily,
me just interject there.
Yes,
Go
for it.
For the Vietnam vets who are like, their jaws are dropping, the laundromat was the nurses' headquarters at Cameron Army. And they had a trailer with 2 washing machines and 2 dryers in it. It was probably the only self-service laundry operation on all of Cameron Peninsula. but I found it and I used it.
Imagine like high school kids who are learning about the Vietnam War and they're like, wait, like this is the things I was excited for them to know. That's what Anne, that's one of the stories Anne has. And because I think there's too many of the movies that show just like the events, the politics, but there's the other moments where, you know, this is the moment that Anne talked about. And then I would ask other people what they did on their time off. So I was able to kind of create these conversations through common themes. And then when there wasn't common themes and people disagreed, I would just have those conversations together. And even when there were moments where people perhaps didn't want to talk about something, I allowed there to be silence on stage. So I really feel like with this kind of things, if you just hopefully, and it's always my biggest fear to not honor the stories that I was given, especially in something as subject matter as important as this, if you honor what they said and you just show it on stage, it all comes together. So the hardest part was not putting things together. It was, how do I decide what can be included? Because my interviews are about 3.5 hours long. So that was the hardest part.
Yeah, as a theater guy myself, the silence in a show can speak volumes. There's so many, there's such that rhythm of a play where you get into the dialogue, you get into, and then when a moment of silence can happen, boy, it can floor the entire audience. Boy, and now I have so many thoughts in my head that it's hard to like get them all together. Was it surprising to you as you started into the interview process that it wasn't going to be military veterans that were in Vietnam, that there were actually civilians there as well?
Well, I think it's because like I actually started with Anne and Judy as like my first like introductions. So I was one of the few who knew a little bit more about the civilian plays, but I don't think I had any idea what it meant until I did the interview about what it meant for veteran benefits, what it meant in you know, because obviously when there was the interview happened, you know, for Lily, who was a military nurse, she talked about not feeling as much perhaps as she was a veteran. You know, she volunteered and, you know, and just the many thoughts that came up. So then when I learned more about the civilian employees, I think I knew about them, but it wasn't until I did the interviews and learned more that I was really shocked, especially, you know, again, we talk a little bit, Ann and I, about like Agent Orange and other such things that really affected the civilian employees. And they have a much different, I mean, everyone has a hard experience with it. But again, when it comes to testing and stuff like that. So I think that was what kind of opened my eyes to the civilian employees. And then for Donut Dollies and Red Cross, when I started to learn where I did not know what a donut dolly is, which is in the script, which is like, you know, people are like, what's a donut dolly? And not really understanding exactly what that job description meant and just the importance and how hard that job was in the middle, especially of Vietnam.
What was it about? I know having a theater background, obviously this was going to be a play. But what was it about this becoming a play that would be more powerful than it being a film or a biography?
I mean, I'm just a theater person, so I can always say that I think that it should be a theater piece. But I especially wanted this to be, I think there's something about being in the room together and having the experience with the audience that I think is really important for something like this. And there's a lot of breaking the fourth wall. And so, especially for a younger generation that doesn't know very much about this history, or I find a lot of times they're reading it in history books and they're not really connecting to it. I find it's really important for this play to be there for them to see a character talk about it. And then I love talkbacks, and we've been really lucky. Like there's nothing, I will say, I don't think, I mean, the play is very powerful, but then when you're done with the play and then Ann Kelsey stands up and you're like, wait, that's an actual person that I just learned about all of this. I think it makes the history a lot more real. And I think that that's why it's really important for this to be done in person.
And whenever Ash approached you with this idea, what were your thoughts?
Well, she really first approached me to do an oral history, which, you know, I mean, I had been to several of the productions that her company had put on since we met in, I guess, 2012, something like that. So, you know, and I hauled all my friends to them because they were just so unique and told these stories, women's stories that nobody really knew about. So when she approached me to do to do my oral history for, I think you were working on your master's, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was happy to do that. I've done a lot of oral histories about my Vietnam experience. So it just started out as sitting and asking questions. And yes, we did that once. I think at the New York Public Library, at the business
Yes.
library. Yeah.
Yep.
And then she came with a video camera to do a second interview, and she came to my house. And that's when I started to get the idea that maybe they were going to turn this into a production. So, and I was very intrigued about that. I mean, I love theater. I go to theater a lot. I have a lot of friends in theater. And I thought, wow, what an interesting concept to take an oral histories and turn it into a play. So I was really enthusiastic about it, and so curious to see how it would work.
And how, Ash, how did you make it work? You mentioned that it was a 55-minute play.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I love collaboration. So I think I just got a bunch of actors that summer and said, "Hey, do you want to do a thing?" And that was actually what was great about it. We didn't think about where it was going to go. We just wanted to tell the stories because they were phenomenal. And so we got a bunch of actors together, and we worked on pages, and we just kept trying out different scenes. I think I told Sean this, I knew that I wanted the set to be very minimal because these stories were powerful enough. So the actual set are just 5 blocks that get stacked to become a hill. They become a bunker, and they just become all the different spaces. And even the sound effects are actually made by props and the actors. So there's absolutely no technology in the show until the end, when I do play some of the voiceovers of the actual women who I interviewed. And so I already knew that I wanted that to be the basis of it. And we wanted the first showing of it to be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, because we knew that's where a lot of plays went to really be tested, especially things that were a little different than what people are used to. And you get exactly 60 minutes in that space to get your stuff in, to get your stuff out. So we had exactly 55 minutes to do this play. But I will tell you, in 55 minutes, this production, it goes into why the women joined, what it was like when they got there, what their jobs were, what they did on their time off, what they did on Christmas, which I absolutely loved, because those stories are very different depending on who I talked to. Why, what they felt when they left, what it was like when they came home, and the Vietnam Women's Memorial, and when they went to that and the Vietnam Wall. So a lot happens in a short period of time. But that's what I absolutely love about it. It's just like a whirlwind. And so we just kept workshopping it until we brought it to Edinburgh in the summer of 2018. And then the final production that we brought everywhere from then on was that Veterans Day back in New York City in 2018. And I think at that point, almost everyone had seen the production because it was really important for them to see it.
I want to bring up on screen real quick before I go to Kristen here. This is the number of places that In Their Footsteps has premiered. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we did our first workshop at Under St. Mark's. And then they have a thing at East 59th before you go to Edinburgh where you can show it. We got our first big review. We were shocked. It was incredible. We were like, oh, let's just do the thing. We got a great review. We bought it to Fringe. And that's when we started touring it. So we actually were hired by Merrill Lynch to talk about, this is specifically for women who are a part of Merrill Lynch and Bank of America, and just looking what it's like to be in a private organization as a woman. And a lot of these were obviously the things that came up in the play were really similar. We were beyond lucky to do it for the WOSL conference. And that gave us a lot of incredible stories. I met some incredible women who talked about their own experiences after they saw the play. We continued to do it. It actually was picked up by an Australian company that did 2 tours of it because it connected so much to their audiences. And then we were supposed to bring it in 2020 to Italy, but we were able to bring it in 2021. And they didn't actually have women veterans until the early 2000s. So we actually were able to have talkbacks about what it's been like for their women veterans. since they've joined the military, some of the same issues and problems. And then during COVID, we decided to make it a radio play, which we actually reintroduced this past November in honor of Lucki. We added special programming that showed more of my interview with Lucki, that we're very honored actually won a Gracie Award this year for its radio version. And now we're actually putting it up in the Bronx this fall. It's first time it's come back since 2021, and the first time it'll be back in the States since pre-COVID. And then we're hoping to do a tour of it. And then, of course, bring it, like I've said, to Lucki's home in Oakland, which is where she always wanted the play to be. And I promised her that I would figure out a way to get it to Oakland.
We have to figure out a way to bring it to Pittsburgh.
I would love to bring it to Pittsburgh. I mean, I would love to bring it everywhere. It's a great play.
Absolutely. We'll connect because I know some people. I know some people. I know some people.
All right. Okay.
So real quick, Kristen, because this popped in my head before.
Yeah.
Ash, seeing that this traveled around the world,
Mhm.
what were other countries' audiences' reactions to these, very American stories, especially during a very conflicted time in our past during the Vietnam War?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I only ever did it in Italy, so I can speak to the Italian audience. And like Ashley said, this was a new issue for them that they had been kind of understanding in a newer sense. I mean, them getting the right to serve in the military and be honored as veterans was very new to them. So I think an audience is an audience. And we had subtitles for our play so that they were right. That was in Italian. I mean, I was on the stage, so I didn't.
I worked. Yeah, there was a college student. Real quick, they have a program there where they work with the college. And so throughout COVID, I worked with the student in the college to do the translation. And my favorite thing was explaining the words like re-up. There was a lot of military terms that they obviously couldn't, they didn't understand, or American colloquialisms that it took a while for them to understand. So that was really fun to make the super titles for it. Sorry, go ahead, Kristen.
No, it's okay. It was really cool. I had never done a show like that. And so half the time the audience is watching you, half the time they're reading and going back and forth. And it really caused them to have to really connect to the play because they had to be paying attention the whole time. Otherwise, you lose something. It's like watching a foreign film with subtitles. Like if you look away, you're like, what's going on? And so they were really connected. And, women have had similar struggles in across the board, being kind of ignored in a room of men. There was a lot of talk about, sexual assaults and things like that in the play. And the talking of that hits home with a lot of women, seeing people that you love suffering, friends you've just made, but you're in such traumatic circumstances, like you're bonding so quickly. We've all experienced certain things to a lesser extent. And so I wouldn't say that it was too different performing for another.
You're talking about women universal themes.
Yeah, women universal themes are very prevalent in it. So we were hitting people who were veterans, new people in the military, were people in the military, and women. So it was just a huge audience who when you're in the room with someone, you're feeling what they're feeling. And so it felt very similar to an American audience, but almost more intense because they had to be paying attention. They had to be focused.
I'll also agree with that point that, I've been to London, I've seen shows in Italy, the theater there is just next level in a lot of ways. From what, audiences just seem to understand theater a bit more. It's more appreciated over in the European theater scene from my experience and sitting there in the audiences and just sort of viewing and being a part of that world and coming back and being a part of the American theater scene. It's very different. I think they're two different stages in a way. It's just a side observation that I've experienced. Kristen, were you a part of this production from the beginning? Were you a part of the initial production and played Anne?
No, actually, I have a funny story of how I got involved in it. With it, it was going to go to Italy in 2020. And then, of course, global pandemic happened. Things got changed and shuffled. And they called Ash, like, forgive me and interject if I'm getting this wrong, but they called her and they're like, hey, you want to go to Italy in 2021? And she was like, yes. And then she didn't have an Anne. And we had met briefly over Zoom. We never met in person, but we met over Zoom to read something or do an interview with me and my partner. And she remembered me and she was like, hey, do you want to go to Italy? And I said, yes, I would love to do that. I will go. Whatever you need, I'll be there. So it was that's how I got involved. It was very spur of the moment, which kind of fits in with this whole play and how it all came about. This was the most wild experience of my life. It was incredible.
But that's kind of how I always work with actors. Like, if I get a sense that someone has something, I'll just say, hey, do you want to do a show? And we lost, I would say, most of our company members during COVID. I would say about 95%, and almost everyone who was in this play moved out of New York City during quarantine. So when we were like, hey, do you want to come do this in Italy now in 2021? We basically had to almost recast the entire thing and figure out how to do it. But I feel like when you get a census, almost everyone that was in that production was someone that I was like, I could tell there's something about you. You'll appreciate the story. You're a wonderful talent. That's all I need to know. And then I just asked if they wanted to do it.
I would love to get a call like that. Are you kidding? That'd be great.
It was incredible.
Let's go to Italy, do a show.
I had just been newly unemployed because, of layoffs and such happening during that time. And it was like, all right, this is fate. I'm going to Italy. I have no plans. I can do this. So
was there a point that you got to meet Anne and sort of, see
yes.
the person behind?
In
this
Italy.
This is a very key point. That's
yeah, in Italy,
thing as an actor.
We went and we got coffee and some like Italian cappuccinos with pastries, and we just talked, and it was lovely. But I had like been, did we meet over Zoom beforehand? I can't remember.
No,
that was the first time. So I was creating
that was the first time.
I
was like locked down.
Yes.
Going to Italy was my first big step out since February 2020.
Yes. Yeah. So I had created Anne. Oh my gosh, this is
Hi, Kitty.
So sorry about that. Hello.
Do not upstage me.
Get out of here. I had been creating Anne myself from her words, from her story. And I was just given what she had written down. And Ashley is such a good interviewer, and she kept all the records, she kept everything. So I was able to like really listen to and really read what Anne said in her own words, which is the whole point of what Ashley is trying to create here is history is so important. If we forget history, we repeat it. We can't do that. And so she did just such a good job that I was able to take those words and create an Anne and then meet Anne in Italy and then make, adjustments and let this character live and breathe and evolve to how I was to portray Anne. And I hope I did a good job.
You did do a good job.
Thank you, Anne.
What was it? So after meeting Anne, you mentioned adjustments. Like, what was it about meeting Anne that made you adjust, like, how you were portraying her?
Well, I think, you get words, you get a script, and it's hard not to bring your own biases, your own interpretation into it. And so, of course, I was doing that when I was reading it, when I was doing the initial performances, and when we were workshopping for the beginning of it. But meeting Anne and really like digging into more questions, I think the biggest thing that I took away was like how close Anne was with everyone she worked with, and how tight knit a whole group of veterans are. And it's like a whole network of people who know what each other has gone through, who have like such sympathy and love and respect for each other that they keep up with each other. And all of you have done such wonderful things, and you are so important and vital to where we are now. And so, of course, you all respect each other and love each other. But the weight of that really wasn't felt until I met Anne in person and really like saw that in her when she was talking about and bringing up so many names. And I'm like, how do you even remember all these people? That's crazy. She was like, yeah, that person did this and that person did this. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it just is very impactful. And I think that impacted my performance there.
Kristen, do you come from a military family?
My grandfather was in the Coast Guard, but this was way before I was around. But I know he, had to make big sacrifices with that, but I didn't really understand the extent of it because he didn't really talk a lot about it. And so it's there's something about being like separated from someone to a degree to
Mm.
them being able to tell the stories. So it did make me want to go back to my grandpa and talk to him a little bit about it. So that's
So
it.
that's sort of the next, that's what I'm leading to here with you, Kristen. And I would also like to ask the same question of Ash. But has this play helped bring you a new understanding of not only like women's roles in the military and veterans, but military issues as well? We talk a lot about civ-mil divide here with BBC and not understanding base and veterans not understanding the civilian space. And did that help bridge that for you?
I think it definitely did. I think there's still like a layer of like, of course, like I will never fully understand, but I can I have a new respect and a new understanding. This play felt like I was just relearning history. And I had no idea that every person who went there wasn't a person from the military. Like, so therefore they didn't get veteran benefits and they didn't come back with certain privileges or did come back with certain privileges, and how people were, treated after this experience when coming back from this war. And hearing about just there's so many subjects that were just my eyes open to. Um, I don't even know. I don't even know how to describe it, but it really humbled me. I would have to say humbled is like the best word for it. I'm a young person, and we always like to say it. And as I get older, I'm like, young people don't get it. And I'm still young. Like we still are like, you learn something new all the time. But this was a moment where I was like, wow, this is a weight that um, those who experienced it have to carry, and I have to be so very grateful um, because I am now positively impacted a lot by the sacrifices and the duty that they served. So I think there's better understanding, of course. I don't know if bridge is ever like the term. I'm like trying so hard to understand it, but you never really fully can understand the impact. But I can say that I am much more grateful and much more humbled knowing these stories. And so I thank Ashley for creating this company and allowing history to be told by those who lived it, which I think is so very important because this show will live on and it will continue to impact audiences. It will continue to impact actors who are lucky enough to be in it. And yeah, I don't even know. It was so.
Ash, it was very well said, Kristen, and it resonates a lot with me as well. I'm not a veteran myself. Always enjoyed veteran stories. It wasn't until I became a part of the BBC and started living in this space a little bit more that I always say that this job allows me to come up to the edge and sort of touch what those experiences of the people in this room are. Though I will never understand it,
Yeah.
I can at least start to empathize with it or get a better understanding of their sacrifices and the stories that they've shared. Ash, that same question to you, like sort of the development of this, did it help you understand women in the military or their sacrifices more?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's just I didn't know very much about the military, to be very honest. I mean, there was the little bit that, obviously you learn what you learn in school, and there was nothing else that was really told to me. And I think there's a line from the play that Judy says where she says, separate the war from the warrior. And obviously it's good to know about the wars, but since the play, have just, I am open to learn about the warriors. And I've learned that not everyone wants to talk, and that's okay. And since then, IVP has also done a production about the Women Air Force Service pilots. I actually work at a martial arts school, and we have a veteran program where we try to offer classes to veterans. And I think it just made me want to help and be more aware of veterans and again, I think there's so much to it that I don't think I could understand, just like anyone who goes, like, humans are humans. And I think what I love about oral history drama is when you interview someone, you get a little taste of who they are. And that's an incredible honor to be able to have. So I feel like from the moment that I interviewed these 5 women, I learned so much about 5 incredible women. So it wasn't, obviously I learned about, veterans and civilian employees, but I actually just learned about these 5 incredible women. And then from there, every time we did a production, people would I have stories of people coming up to me. They would feel that, again, I did research, and they'd come up to me and then they would tell me their stories. And I always feel like it's important now, though, for me to share those stories with anyone that I can, as well as to make space for conversations like this. Because at the end of the day, I think what this play has given me is just the knowledge that these stories exist and they should be told. So I think that's I don't think I could ever quite understand, obviously, and know what it's like or anything like that. But I think it made me realize that there's all these stories out there that really do need to be told. And I think especially in, the military, where I think there's a lot of movies that portray certain events, all of that. I think opening it up and just hearing a person's voice and making it more human is very important. And more important than I think anything else is to show the human underneath everything. So I think that's what this play has showed me, is that there's humans underneath all of these stories that we read about in our history books. Like, they're actually people. And so that's, I think, the lesson that I got from it.
Yeah, I would actually want to echo off of that is I think that was probably the biggest takeaway. You took the words and made them clear. But that was the biggest takeaway. We think of these issues like war is an issue. War is something scary and horrible and terrible. And you don't really think about the individuals who are involved in that, and who we think of the military as a whole thing. We don't think about the individuals involved. We think of like the US as a whole thing. We don't think about the individuals. So hearing these stories from the literal words that someone says, it's so important and so impactful, because that is history being told by those who firsthand saw it. It humanizes people. Stories like Ash said, we love a good war movie, but those are characters. Those aren't real people. And it's so important to know, like, real people lived these things. They weren't just, guns and bombs and walking away from an explosion really in cool sunglasses. Like, it's real people who live these things.
And if I may real quick, this goes into Sam, because I think also what people don't think about. So one of my favorite stories of Sam, and I know you love this story, Sam, because we have it as a thing here, is Sam talks about what it's like to get tampons and what happened to tampons in Vietnam. And like, those are the stories too that should be there, right? Like, and that's not even just this. I can tell you from interviewing women in any area where women are not, there's always a conversation about, yeah, we had a really hard time getting tampons. And that is obviously in any of the spaces. Or like even any, I always talk like another thing, I want to hear from Sam about this, but also like when people talk about when I went to Sarah Lawrence, there was actually the area that it was built was not actually originally for women, even though it's a women's school. So the area where we were at, there were no bathrooms for women. And you hear about that from women who are in science institution, all that. They're like, there's just no bathroom for women on my floor. And so like, I feel like those are also the stories that people should hear, like what happens to tampons when they are sent to Vietnam. And that was one of the first stories I heard from Sam, and one of my favorite moments.
Let me jump right in, because we do actually have the clip from the play, the radio play, that I'd like to play. Sam,
favorite.
I'm going to come right to you after playing the clip. So everyone, I'm sharing my sound. So what you're going to hear is part of the radio version of In Their Footsteps. And the actresses portraying this. So hopefully everybody can hear this.
I remember going to the PX, the post-exchange military store, to see if they had Tampax.
But if they did show up at the PX, the men would just grab them.
Yes, The guys used them to clean their guns.
Well, they were really excellent for cleaning M16s. For the barrels of the M16.
Well, I also remember the PX because of... It was Joni Fowler from Nha Trang that I went to the PX with. And I was following her up to the checkout, and there were these gold coins in a bucket right next to the register. Oh, chocolates! To me, growing up in Wisconsin, gold coins were chocolate coins. Well, at the PX, they were... condoms. They were condoms. Joni was so embarrassed, but, you know, to this day, it still makes me laugh to think about, oh, chocolates. I had no idea back then. Lots of stories.
I go and talk.
Lots of stories. Sam, was that part of your interview?
I believe it was.
Yes, yeah.
As a matter of fact, that was part of the conversation. And it was not one of those conversations you would normally hold with anybody. It was just kind of the spur of the moment discussion. But it was very much part of what happened to me when I was there. You know, you had to find tampons. You had to find ways to get tampons from guys. If you were out in the field and you got your period, all you had to do is ask a guy. You know, forget going to the PX. They were more embarrassed than we were.
I see some smiling faces here, so yes, that seems like that is a true story. And this is the first time I've heard it, too.
That's when you start learning to lose your
great.
embarrassment. Pardon?
So this is the first time I've heard this. Sam, we've had you on the program for a while. I've not heard about tampons being able to clean guns before.
Yep, you learn very quickly where the tampons went. And, you know, very quickly where to retrieve some if you have to have some. And you just get so it's like,
Anything in a
okay,
war zone.
we'll just move on. And the gold coins were another thing. And I often laugh every time I see a gold coin. It's not chocolate anymore. It's condoms. So we laugh about it still to this day.
These moments of levity in a war zone is also something that you don't think about when you think about a war zone. It's like these moments that are still very human.
Oh yeah.
Between people, and you're like, no, this is real life. This is happening, you know. Sam, how did you
Sam
get...
had some of the funniest stories. I do feel like there was so many stories. Like Sam telling, like when the doctor was checking her out, if you don't mind, he was like, squat for me, and you were like, what is happening? And you had to like do a squat like very slowly, and it cracks people up. Like Sam, I think you in particular, just again, I felt like we just had such a good, we were just going back and forth. Like I just met Sam that day. We talked a little bit before, and I was totally honored that I felt like we really bonded, and I just got all those. I mean, it didn't keep from talking about obviously the things of levity that also happened too, you know, but I felt like you were very open with sharing just also the fun that was had too.
So
You
Sam,
can't laugh and cry at the same time.
How did you meet Ash, Sam?
Pardon?
How did you meet Ash at first?
To which?
So how did you meet Ash at first to sort of be a part of this production process?
I think Ann introduced us.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
You were the only one I knew that was in commuting distance of New York, except for Judy and I. So, and I knew there should be somebody from Red Cross. So, I think I gave Ash your name.
Yeah.
Sam, did you know this was going to be a play before you started the interview?
Not really. It was just kind of an oral history that then worked itself into a play.
Were you a part of that like production, the development process of as it became a play, sort of coming in and seeing the workshops? Were you a part of that?
it was a while before things really shifted gears.
Mhm.
And it's all history at this point. But I'm just very glad that Ash was curious about it.
Mhm.
I was very happy to share the information with her. It's not the type of stuff you would normally, as they say, write home about. Gosh, my parents had no clue. And it's just fun history. It's over and done with, and we had a lot of laughs over the whole thing. As I said, you can't laugh and cry at the same time. So we learned to laugh, and we learned to open up and share with people that we never, if somebody was curious, we shared the information with them. We didn't know where it was going to go at the time. And like Anne, I had done a bunch of oral histories. So when Ash said she wanted to do the play, we're like, wow, that's cool. And then I knew Lucki. So she was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And we all, the five of us just really kind of came together and shared our histories. So, if people are interested, we'll share with them. Yeah.
What was it like seeing yourself portrayed on stage?
It was very interesting. The gal that did my character did a good job. She laughed a little. She laughed a lot sometimes. She told it like it was. She took the information I had given Ash and really kind of owned it into her own self. And so she could talk with heart about it. And that was very interesting to see how she could do that. Kristen, I didn't see you in the time being, but eventually she came through. So
I think if I may, Sam, real quick to say, I think one of the hardest things I can say from when we were working with the actors, what you just said is they did it with heart. But actually, I realized there was a production where, I swear to you, the actors just cried for like an hour. And I was like, that is not the women's stories. They didn't go there and they didn't cry. And I think there's that feeling of they would read the oral histories and they would get very affected because it was also like they didn't know about any of these things. And so learning about these things that they weren't taught in school and they didn't know, and just also like this common themes, unfortunately, for women, they would get very upset. And there'd be like a whole production where I think it was the first production we did, they just cried the whole time. And God bless them. Like I was so appreciative of the actors, like really feeling it. But we actually had to I brought them through a workshop where I was like, no, these women had strength. Because if they didn't have strength, they wouldn't have gotten through. And so we actually, I think that's why she was able to have heart, was because she realized that also each of you had incredible strength you wouldn't be able to tell your stories if you didn't have that incredible strength.
Right. We never would have made it through the year.
Yeah.
Never.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. Kristen, that makes me think of like your portrayal of Anne in the production. What is different about taking a story from someone real who you've met and putting that on stage as opposed to like playing Shakespeare or playing a drama or a musical even?
Well, there's a lot more pressure because that person could watch you and you don't want to offend them, and now you've portrayed them. So that's more pressure. I think in some ways it's easier because you have like reference material in front of you. Like you can call the person, you can talk to the person, and you can actually like see them and try to portray them as they are. but in other ways it's harder because you're not just, creating this character from just the words that you're given. Um, so I would say, I don't know, I think it was more rewarding. This was one of the most rewarding shows I've ever done. Um, just because it felt so much more important to honor and tell this story that was I knew was true. I knew um was meaningful. Um, and so yeah, I would say it was just it's far more impactful.
Ash, we had on Kristen Hanna last year, who wrote The Women,
Hmm.
best-selling book about
Yeah,
a
great book.
woman, right? And I
Yeah.
know that since it became a bestseller, I was wondering if you experienced sort of like a bump, like a bump in interest in these stories that, hey, we'd like to put something on stage, like, oh, there's this play in their footsteps.
I would like to say yes. I think it's much harder with theater because I mean I've had a few people who have asked about bringing the production there, but I'm very adamant about my actors being paid what they should to get to do all this. And there's a lot less grants. We are applying, and we actually did get even with everything, we got a grant to put this up in the fall, which is a wonderful reason. I did get a lot of people who come. I mean, I love people, anything to do with women's history. People will reach out to me immediately. Like anytime anyone like watches a movie that's about women in history, they're like, "Did you know?" Because obviously it's what I do. But I think in particular, I think what's really important about this is the fact that theater doesn't. I mean, you originally had asked why theater, and I think theater is harder to bring, but I think it's more impactful. And and when that book came out and everyone was talking about it, for me, it was just important that more people are hearing these stories. And I was really grateful that there was so many book clubs that are reading it. And then I was excited to be like, hey, I know more if you want. And obviously the radio play is actually out there for everybody. So it's like, if you want to learn, and it's more important for people to hear these stories than anything else. But in regards to the production, we make it pretty easy to bring places. But again, I think what always makes it the difference between film and theater is film is something you could just say, hey, here you go. Theater, the same thing we talk about in regards to humans and getting to know the humans. I always think it's really important to make sure the actors have what they need to be able to travel. So unfortunately, we haven't really been able to, like I said, we haven't been able to do it until recently, when we come up. But also, I mean, and I'll say, and I don't mind like saying this, like, I've had schools reach out to me, and this is a problem that happens in the theater world. They don't have a woman of color to play Lucki. And I've actually told 3 schools that they can't do the production then. And that's just, that can't happen unless they do it. And I think that's a sign of what there's some problems in the theater world right now. And that's why I think it's really important. I'm excited. Like you saw, we're going to try our best. I'm applying for as many grants as I can and doing as much as I can so I can bring the play or give the play to people, because I think it's much harder for people to put the play on themselves.
I have a question here from Mark. I'll go to Joe Griffey's here in a second. Zoom does this new thing where they split up people's chats, and I missed a bunch of chats here, so I'm sorry, people, as I get caught up. But from Mark, can you discuss a bit about where to find where the 2025 tour will be, for instance, Northern Virginia or Washington, D.C.? And have you ever thought about engaging World War II women and their huge history as well?
So we don't, yes, that's a great question. We don't have the tour yet because we're starting it in the Bronx. And we are just basically, we're hoping to utilize the Bronx production, and we're just starting to actually see and reach out to people to make this tour. And like I said, the biggest thing is when Lucki passed, it was kind of a fire of this play needs to make it to Oakland. Again, I keep saying it just because Lucki meant a whole lot to me, but also, so actually during COVID, because of Ann, there was actually a high school in Georgia, and we were able to do a Zoom production for them. And we did it, I think we did it 3 times. And the high school kids really enjoyed it. And so the tour itself, it doesn't have dates yet. It doesn't have, basically, this is me saying that I'm committed to doing what I can to make this tour happen for this production now that we're kind of coming back from, it took us a while to come back, I'll be honest, from COVID and quarantine. And as for World War II, yes. So I know a little bit. I know some of the stories. Carla Horowitz is someone that I don't know if anyone knows, but she was a woman she was a WASP women's. Oh my God, yes.
Take 2.
Take 2. She was a WASP in World War II, and I interviewed her as well. And I've interviewed. I actually got to meet Bee Haydu as well. If anyone knows her, who is a WASP as well. We did a production of a wonderful play that I did not write that's out there called Censored and Final Approach, but my company did, and Bee came to talk. And she was wonderful, and Lillian Yanali as well. Unfortunately, the World War II, as we know, veterans are, as we saw today, are passing away. So I've been trying to get as many oral histories as I can, but I very much love to engage with the World War II women. And so I hope that answers your question, but if it doesn't, please let me know.
Joe Griffiths, I muted you.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can.
Good. Another great subject, Sean. This subject's near and dear to me. I guess it was around 7 or 8 years ago. A friend of mine, Bob Riley, who you know, Sean, he's been on your show, calls me, says, we got to do a radio show on donut dollies. I said, God, I haven't heard that name in 45 years. Where am I going to find donut dollies? Now, Ash, you made a comment. I had the honor 6 or 7 years ago of meeting Aaron Miller. I was actually doing a show and her uncle was on, and I put word out on that show that we're going to be doing a show on donut dollies. So Aaron Miller wrote a book about her grandmother, Elaine Harmon, the first WASP to be buried in Arlington. And our show helped to get the Secretary of the Army at the time, Patrick Murphy, the OK, Elaine Harmon to be the first women's Air Force service pilot to be buried in Arlington. And after the show, and now there were other WASP buried in Arlington, but on their husband's status. She was the first one buried on her own women's Air Force service pilot status. After the show, Aaron Miller calls me. She says, my mother, Terry Harmon's a donut dolly. I'm sure all you ladies know Terry Harmon. All of a sudden, like tulips coming up in the spring, donut dollies started calling. Never talked that their sister-in-law was a donut dolly and whatever. And I want to hear more about you, but I want to say one thing to the lady, all the donut dollies on her, Sam and Ann. Can you answer me one question? Why aren't you guys mad and PO'd and disgusted and upset on the way you were treated? I'm a Vietnam veteran. My brother was in Vietnam. I've interviewed 1 million Vietnam veterans in my life. They all got a sense of anger how we were treated when we came home. Nobody was treated worse than our Vietnam veteran donut dollies. And they're still being forgotten about. And if it wasn't for Ann and Libby and the radio play and Richard Sand's books coming out in a week or two, it's like the donut dollies are blooming. They're becoming one of the most important. My friend Mikey Sherrill is about to become that. She won the primary. She's about to be the next governor of New Jersey. She's a congresswoman. She's pushing to get the Congressional Gold Medal reintroduced again. It's about time that I think some of the greatest Vietnam veterans that served, are now getting a recognition. But you got to remember one thing, ladies. You are spoiled. I was on a half track, and you went by Jeep or truck or tank or half track. You guys always had the luxury of the first Uber service in Vietnam called Huey helicopters. And I applaud you. I'm done. I want to hear your stories. Thank you.
Okay, full disclosure, I was not a donut dolly. I did not work for the Red Cross. I worked for the Army. I was a librarian.
Good for you. Good for you.
Sam, I mean, Joe brings up a good point that, it's about time that the donut dollies are recognized. And how was your homecoming? And what has it meant to you, this new sort of appreciation and acknowledgement and being noticed for your service?
First of all, we went not seeking accolades. We went to serve the servicemen. We were there for them. We weren't there for ourselves. And that's a big difference. So when I came home, I did my tour of duty, and I came home and I disappeared into the woodwork. I had done my commitment for the military, and I'm never going to regret that, but I don't necessarily go knocking at doors saying, "Oh, we've got to be recognized." We did our service, and we were very proud of that service. You know, it's hard to explain, and it changed. It changed during the 10 years that they were in Vietnam. When I went in 67, it was, how can I put it diplomatically? It was something we wanted to do. We felt compelled to help. And so we did, and we finished it, and then we moved on. We came home. Nobody knew who we were. The men they knew, because they knew men went to Vietnam. They didn't know Vietnam went to Vietnam in the 67s, basically. So we just kind of disappeared into the background. And, you know, they were my boys then. They always will be my boys. I'm very fond of them. I will go talk to them. I will do other things. But it was just a bit of honor to be able to go and work with them. So that was very different from later in the war. So I don't know if that explains it, but they were my boys. They always will be my boys, you know.
Just, you know, Sam brought that up like a bunch in the interview. That is in the play, that they were they were her boys, and that's in the play a whole lot, because it explained a whole lot of what I felt like when I interviewed you. No matter what was said, they were your boys. And that was the main theme that I got from you, Sam, when I interviewed you. Showed a lot of who you are.
Joe, I think you also bring up a really good point about the passion of the service member for the donut dollies. And I unmuted Rick Weber here because, Rick, I know that of the many veterans I've heard speak of donut dollies, you have always sort of stuck out in my head as one of the more passionate veterans for what they sort of meant to you, because you met donut dollies in Vietnam.
First of all, I want to congratulate all these women, because any woman who went to Vietnam is far above most of the guys that went to Vietnam, because they volunteered, and they were, and I'm going to say this, we talk about Americans' greatest generation. These were the best women in the 60s and 70s because they went. And yes, I have a passion for donut dollies, and Jim Roberts is on, and he does as well. We were both officers, so we really didn't interact with the donut dollies per se. But I will say this, the 2 million people that you came in contact with over the years always consider you their girls. And, you know, the other women were there, nurses. Nurses were good, but nobody wanted to see a nurse. Trust me, because if you were seeing a nurse, that means you were wounded. But the donut dollies brought a different, they were fun. They smiled, they worked their tails off. And I will say that. And they went to fire bases that I still can't believe you went to. Anyway, yes, Jim was on, Jim was part of that Libby. And actually, the irony of it, I never knew her mother, but I knew her father. He was a pilot for the 101st, and I've got a couple of rides from him. But I still keep in touch with a couple of donut dollies. Unfortunately, we lost one that I was with in Vietnam with. When I say with, I don't mean that way. Jenny Kirsch is on my wall, and she will always be on my wall. But as far as you don't need credit. You know what you did, and we know what you did. And so the government's got to get onto it, and they will eventually recognize your service to this country. I know you're Red Cross, so, but you know, I think it's the movement, and it's being forced on them by Vietnam veterans. The same as Agent Orange. They didn't want to talk about it from 1970 to almost 2000. They didn't want to talk about it. Unfortunately, it's going to be partially, it's too late. Not too late, it's never too late. But the key is we know what you did, and we respect what you did, because there's not too many people, myself included, that would go to Vietnam for a year without being dragged in the military. So I salute all of you women, and I think all of you did a great job. So whether you're a librarian or anything, because the librarians were helping guys, I know guys that would. So this is a terrific show. All these women deserve all the credit just by showing up. And I know you don't need a medal. Medals don't mean anything, but you have the respect of most of the GIs that were in Vietnam. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank them. And, you know, when they have a march, you'll see more and more guys show up because they deserve it. And I'm sure Jim Roberts will say the same thing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Justin Miller, you had your hand raised?
Yes, I did. Richard sort of took all the flag out of my room, but I agree totally. I was a division pilot with 25th Division, 68, 69, and the girls that we worked with always had priorities. Now, we gave them extra comfort when we took them out. We made sure there was plenty of water. We made sure they had all their stuff. Every once in a while, we dropped somebody off at some place like the Sanchez, which was on the river, small base, small fire support base, and we'd get locked out of there because of weather. And they'd get to stay there for 3 or 4 days. Yeah, that was not fun. But the troops loved it. And I just go, I can't tell you how many I got a chance to meet. I remember a few of the names, Dora and Sarah. They were there from about June of 69 until I left in November. Anytime they called us, because we were the division pilots, so all they did was call and set it up, and they were there on whichever aircraft we had available. But yes, you made the troops smile, and that was the biggest thing. I tried to carry El Producto cigars and give them away, but that didn't do as much as you did.
Thank you, Justin.
Hey.
I'm going to take a quick sort of station break here just to thank our sponsor, UPMC for Life. They have programs made by veterans for veterans. You can check out all of your plan options, including ways that you could put money back in your pocket just by going to their website, upmchealthplan.com/Medicare. Thank you, UPMC for Life, for supporting and sponsoring the Veterans Breakfast Club. We have a free quarterly magazine that we send out to any of the households that we have an address for. So if you have not received this magazine, just because we don't have your address, please send that to me. We'll get it out to you. This was our spring edition. It is sold out. It was honoring the fall of Saigon, the 80th anniversary. And then it was an 80th anniversary. I think it's 70th anniversary. But anyway, we're looking at the summer edition here. This will be VJ Day, the 80th anniversary. That's why I said 80th. The 80th anniversary of VJ Day. This will be filled with veteran stories commemorating that day, what their experiences were, some historical context, a lot of education in these magazines. So please send us an address. We'll be happy to get that out to you. We also have another program on Saturday morning, an in-person breakfast at the VFW up in Butler. So if you'd like to check us out for a breakfast, please head up there and come on. This is same great veteran stories. We just go around the room with a mic. It's such a great time. You have a good breakfast. You get good stories. Always great. And we are partnering with the Washington Wild Things for Saturday night's baseball game. Bruce Unks, who some of you may know, is throwing out the first pitch for Army Birthday as well as Flag Day, and we'll have a box there. So if you would like to come, veterans are free. Please send me an email. I'll get you the link. Veterans are free. If you bring anybody with you, they're $10. So hopefully the rain holds off and we get to have a nice night of baseball down at the Washington Wild Things. Back to our program here. I'd like to play the next piece from the play. Have a bit from Ann here. We're going to go back to you, Ann. This is you talking about the Cameron Library. So if everyone would like to sit back, let me make sure I'm sharing my sound here, and I will get that queued up.
Cameron was a transportation hub, and the guys would take a convoy out, bring it back, and then they would sit until the next one was ready to go. So they would have a lot of downtime. And it was all guys. So I learned I was not going to have big business and novels. Do you need a little help finding something to read?
Huh?
That was really the purpose of all of this morale and recreation. The whole idea was to keep these guys out of trouble. And the guys paid attention.
So it was about keeping the guys out of trouble, Ann.
Yeah, that was Westmoreland's philosophy. What you can't see because it's a radio play and not the stage play is what Anne hands the soldier as a copy of Playboy, which was our most popular periodical.
It wasn't the New York Times?
No, but we did have the New York Times. We had the New York Times and other major city newspapers flown in from Japan, current issues. We also had all the other current magazines, Time, Newsweek. The woman who ran the library program, and she started in 1962 with the Navy before she went to the Army, would not allow any censorship. So soldiers could come into any of the libraries and they read the papers just as if they were at home.
What did it mean to you, your service and being in Vietnam?
Well, like Sam said, the reason I was there was to do something for the soldiers. I was at UCLA going to grad school, library school, from the summer of '68 to the summer of '69, which, if you think back, was a pretty heavy-duty time in terms of anti-war protests on university campuses, especially in California on the UC campuses. So it was a very uncomfortable situation. Soldiers were being accosted. If they could recognize somebody as a soldier or a vet, they were right on them. And it was not pretty. And I grew up near a big Air Force base, SAC base. Most of my friends were Air Force brats. My dad worked for the Navy. Most guys I dated were military. And I was just beside myself. I just couldn't stand what was going on and how these guys were being blamed for what was happening. So the Army Special Services recruiters came to the library school recruiting librarians for Army libraries. Every Army base, everywhere, in the States, in Europe, in Asia, wherever there was an Army base, there was a library of some kind. And they were recruiting libraries worldwide, for libraries worldwide. And I found out there was a library program in Vietnam. Wow. So I signed right up.
That had to take a lot of courage.
I didn't think about it as being courageous. I thought, this is something that I can do and show these guys that not everybody is hating them.
Yeah.
I unmuted Peggy Kelly. Peggy, you just put into the chat that you arrived home, Rochester, New York, the morning of Thanksgiving. I'm assuming were you a donut dolly, or did you serve?
I was. I'm sort of piggybacking on what Sam was talking about. We were having a big family dinner, and the only person I could relate to that day was my cousin Larry Lind, who had been with the 199th Light Infantry Brigade a year before I was there, and I used to visit that same unit. And I know Sam talked about sort of forgetting things. Well, I ended up working as a youth director at a local chapter in Wheeling, West Virginia. In fact, I used to love to come to Pittsburgh as much as I could from Wheeling. And anyways, even though I was a youth director, part of my job was to go out with my slides and give a presentation to any Rotary, Elks, Moose, whatever. That whole year I worked in Wheeling to show what the Red Cross did.
Amazing. What you've been listening in tonight, what does it mean to you to have something like this play out there telling these stories that meant, that resonate with you so much?
You never have enough stories, and everyone has different ones, and it makes you think of another one very similar to some of Sam's stories. And it just it connects us so much more every time we're able to be together, and luckily we're able to share our stories, and it gets out more and more.
Peggy, I'm gonna play the next clip of the play here in a second, but what was your homecoming like?
Well, as I said, it was very weird because the last day I'm in Saigon and we get to Tan Son Nhut, and the flight was canceled and we had to go back to a hotel. And I shared a bedroom with another gal, Diane Slivka, who had been at Coochie when Ginny Kirsch had been murdered. And during the middle of the night, there was a knock on our door, and it was someone saying, "Peggy, Diane, I know you're in there." And I just calmed Diane down. I said, "Is someone drunk? Don't worry about it." And of course, we were able to leave the next day, but it was it just reinforced some of the tragedies that we had when we were there. And I stopped in Japan on the way home, but when I got to San Francisco, I stayed there a week because everybody said, make the most of your trip. And I got on the plane in San Francisco the night before Thanksgiving. It was a red eye. And everyone looked familiar on the plane. They're all GIs. I did not have my uniform on, but I ended up sitting next to a guy I had gone to college with. And this was at Albany, SUNY Albany. And he was a year ahead of me. He had flunked out of law school, ended up in Thailand with a signal company. So the whole way back, everyone else was sleeping and we're talking. So no matter, you get away from where you are, but you still have contact wherever you end up going.
Thank you, Peggy. Ash, I want to play the clip of Lucki, who's talking about the Tet Offensive. I'd love to
Also,
hear your
Nancy,
thoughts.
real quick, Nancy said that there's a person here, Nancy, that said that she was Lucki Allen's company commander. And I feel like that must, if Nancy is here, I'm sure there are many. Lucki was quite the incredible person. So I just want to, thank Nancy again. I don't know if she's here and able to talk, but I'm sure there's many stories from that if she was Lucki's company commander.
Yes, I just wanted to reinforce what you said about Lucki and how outstanding she was and the important job she had up in Army Vietnam headquarters. And Lucki remained up until 2 years ago. She was very, very active We have an organization called Vietnam Women Veterans, non-nurses, and Lucki always came to our reunion. So last year she didn't make it, but because she had another commitment, not because she was sick. But anyhow, she certainly is missed, and she was missed at the last reunion, and she'll be missed at this one too. But I could tell you all kinds of stories about Lucki and that, but we won't go into all that right now. Thank you so much for what you're doing for women, Ash.
Oh no, I'm glad that I'm able to do it. And I will say for Lucki too, I think that's what was such a shock that she passed, because Lucki was 97, but I think in our hearts she was like 35. So I think when it happened, we never thought, like when it happened, all of us were like, wait, what? Because again, Lucki was she's such a firecracker in all the ways. And I mean, like everyone here, the luckiest thing is that each of these women became friends throughout this entire process from, 2017, 2016 to now. Lucki was still calling me. I got like a new apartment, and she was calling me to see how it was. We were FaceTiming in. She always remembered. She remembered my niece and nephew, and she would ask how they're doing. Like, she was a friend. Yep. And I was very honored to have her as a friend as well.
Nancy, if you want to connect with Ash, just send me an email, or however you guys want to connect. You're welcome to put that in the chat if you'd like. Let me go ahead and play this clip. This will sort of lead us into our last question here. But this is a clip of Lucki talking about the Tet Offensive.
Even after I put out the biggest report 30 days prior to the Tet Offensive, saying that there was going to be a really big attack and the Viet Cong were going to come in big numbers. And the men there didn't take it right. And it happened. And lots of people died because they didn't listen to me. I still don't know if it was because I was Black, Women's Army Corps, or just woman. A whole year further, I reported we were about to have another attack. Women don't go down to the 2nd Field Force, period. But I did. I went down there and stood before the board.
So it's not just about sprinkling those magic words.
They are around our perimeter. There are some 22 millimeter rockets, 122 millimeter rockets around our perimeter. This is going to happen.
And so it's not just about sprinkling those magic words, but also finding out.
You gotta do something about it.
Hear, whether it's variable annuity.
This is gonna happen. You have to. I would have normally turned around and given up on it. But I had to bring myself into it and say, I am gonna die. I'm going to die. I don't want to die. And I thought about my daddy. When the kids at school said that I got little bird legs, and my daddy said,
"Baby, are you standing here by your daddy? All right. You're standing on your legs, right? That's all you need, baby."
So I stood on them in Vietnam.
You guys mentioned that she's a firecracker.
Yeah, and I will say, I think the last part of this that is about to come up that always breaks my heart is the way that she got people to pay attention is she stood up there and cried, because there is that stereotype that when women cry, it makes people uncomfortable. And she chose to cry so she could get them to pay attention. And she was right in the report. I mean, that's what she was hired to do, was to find out what the Viet Cong were doing. And she was right. And again, because she had predicted the Tet Offensive happened and no one listened to her. And she continued to say that she felt responsible for the fact that it happened because they didn't listen to her. And so this time it was a year. She served for 3 years. And so she stood up and she cried to get them to listen. And that was one of the things that, I mean, it was hard enough to hear her story, but then to hear that's what she did. And that was lucky because, again, she was like, that's what I had to do. And yes, she was. I have many. That's actually part of, if you go on and we have the radio play, we did like a talk, a round table about Lucki. We all have incredible stories about Lucki. Yeah, there's Dr. Doris Lucki Allen. She got her PhD as well. She was an incredible person. And very quickly, I'll tell you, it is on the thing, but my favorite story about Lucki is so she came to see the show. She came to all performance. She sat right in the front row. And she, afterwards, we went to a bar. She gave me one note and then she just moved on because that was Lucki. She didn't need to say anything else. And then I commented because she was wearing this beautiful scarf. It was this red scarf with gold stars on it. And I was told Lucki, I was like, I love your scarf. So she took it off and she went to give it to me. And I was like, no, Lucki, I didn't ask you for it because I wanted it. And Lucki looked at me and said, do you think I'm that weak that I would give you something just because you asked for it? If I give you something, it's because I want you to have it. And I still have that scarf. And that was Dr. Lucki Allen. She knew what she was doing and she was an incredible person. And again, I mean, and that's there's so many stories that need to be told. And obviously, Lucki, she wrote an incredible book. If you can, I think it's 3 days past yesterday. I think you can get it on Amazon, that you should definitely check out. But also that's why we want to do whatever we can to get her story out there, because unfortunately she's no longer with us. And so and many people should get to know Dr. Lucki Allen.
And my final question, I'm going to get the link here for 3 days past yesterday. My final question is this play, and maybe this question for Anne. Plays tend to, if you've been in the theater world, they kind of live forever. They're eternal in ways that books almost can't be. Movies certainly not. And what does it feel like to you to have your story sort of immortalized in this play that could be produced in 100 years, 200 years?
It's really an honor to be part of it, to be part of this production, to have all our stories told. And as you say, theater is very different from reading a book or watching a film. It's so immediate, and it really conveys feeling. And the idea that students can feel that, or anybody can feel that, is very different from pulling up my oral history from the Texas Tech website and reading it. It's just really an extraordinary experience to hear myself in my own words talking, and to see how an audience reacts to that, and how they react when they realize that that character is also a real person in front of them.
I want to thank everybody for your time tonight, for sharing your stories. Ash, this is such a wonderful production, and I truly hope that we can bring it to Pittsburgh here. Like I said, I'd love to connect you with some theaters to see if
I love that.
a possibility. That'd be amazing.
I'd love that too.
Definitely. And Sam, Ann, thank you for coming on to share how this experience has affected you and sharing more of your stories. Like I said, we've had you on programs before, and it's always great to hear more about your service. And Kristen, thank you so much for sharing the actor's perspective. Love that. It's always so much fun for me to hear that experience. And everybody, Peggy, thank you for jumping in here. To everybody, we have our Saturday morning breakfast Saturday night. We'll be back Monday night. We're going to be talking with Jeremy Baker, who wrote the novel Guilty Sleep. Daria is going to be hosting, and I'll be with her Monday night. So looking forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you all for sharing tonight, and we'll hope to talk to you soon. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.